Jen, you are definitely a person of joy, which is why we thought having you on for this episode would be perfect. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
And I mean, we're really looking at, this is our time to rise. And how do we rise to meet life's challenges with joy? I mean, how do we do that? And one of the things that first attracted me to you specifically was your joy. I have to say, you are someone who, even on social media, you communicate joy, which is so interesting. And that is how I started following you, because I caught the joy that you were putting out. So tell us a little bit about just your definition of joy. What does it mean to you, and how does that manifest in your life?
Well, that is a good question and kind of loaded. I think if you follow me on Instagram specifically, it's because my family dances. And I have teenagers. So, I mean, one of the most common questions is, how do you get your teenagers to dance with you? And honestly, the day that I have to make them do it, we will not do it. Because that's not the point. That's not the point. But the truth is, it's a culture that I've created in our home from early years, like from the littles years, which we probably, many moms dance with their littles. And then there comes this point where everybody gets a little inhibited, or we feel it's not appropriate. And dancing is honestly, like, it does something, just like exercise does something to your endorphins. Dancing does the same thing, which just will boost your mood. So I found it even more vital to do when they started tweening and teening. It was like, come on.
A lot of mood boosting is needing to happen in that phase of life. A lot of mood boosting, people. Yeah.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
So it was sort of like, come on, let's just dance. And then also, it was just something that sort of like became a part of our culture. And I refuse to let other opinions or worldly perspectives, or the things that wanted to keep them down, infiltrate too much of our home. So it's like, hey, it's in our four walls. Now, clearly I've blasted on social media with their permission, but it also just became a part of our routine in so many ways. For a while, we were just like, every Friday night, that was when we all had nothing to do, because it was in that 2021 era. But it's just like something that we began to look forward to as a family that really did increase the level of joy in our home, and make sometimes it caused us to rise. It caused us to rise beyond what was hard, what was dark, things that were difficult. And so yes, that's part of the joy that sometimes people identify if they follow me on social media, is just because we dance. But it's also a form of worship. I mean, and so oftentimes it elevates our perspective in a spiritual way, even if we're dancing to something silly, or it's not even like praise music, it does elevate our perspective. And that's joy. Joy comes from an elevated perspective by being connected to God, and joy is then cultivated.
Okay, so let's stop there, because I feel like that's your definition, is that joy is operating from an elevated perspective, where you aren't being bogged down by realities of this world, but also the hard parts of this world. It's being tethered to the hope that we find in God's kingdom. Is that how you would define it?
Yes, so well said. It's exactly how I would define it. I actually have a little bit of an unpopular opinion about joy. I don't always think it's a choice. Like, it is rooted to a decision that you make to stay connected to God, because joy is a fruit of the Spirit. So it is produced, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, all of the fruits of the Spirit are cultivated, and are you bear those fruits when you make the decision to be connected to God, who is our elevated perspective, which was where all our hope comes from. So it's, I find that actually freeing because it's like, oh, I don't have to make it up. Like, I don't have to like figure out and like make all the good choices. Because what about the day that I make a bad choice? Or what about the day that I just can't muster up the strength? I can't pull myself up by my bootstraps and choose joy. What I can do is get connected to the presence of God, who is with me under pressure, who is with me in the darkness. That's a simple request, like, Lord, come near. And then being connected to him, that produces the fruits of the Spirit in my life as I abide, and joy abounds. Joy abounds.
Yeah, so good. So you mentioned this culture of joy. You've created a culture of dance. And I mean, these aren't just any dances. They're like choreographed. I mean, they are choreographed. They're so cute. But you also just mentioned the word culture, and that's something I really am passionate about, is how do we create culture in any group that we're a part of, and family is a huge part of that. But and you lead other groups as well. You are in a lot of leadership positions in your life. So let's talk about, how do you create joy in, like, how do you make that a part of your culture?
All about connection. So like I just said, I think joy comes out of being in a connected relationship with God. So when you want to create that culture in, whether it's in your home or your business or your nonprofit or in your, church community, it's about truly connecting to others. And that means even in the unhappy moments, it's about truly being with the people. For me, there's a part of joy. Yes, we dance, but it isn't even about the doing always. It's about the being. And sometimes you need a tool or a vehicle to be together. So we have these environments where we gather together in the vehicle of business, or we gather together to serve in a nonprofit, but so sure, it can take lots of different vehicles that bring us together in connection, and then being with one another, regardless of if it's a happy moment or not, like sitting even with people in their sorrow actually will produce joy, because we know that the scripture tells us it is beauty from ashes, and that we have to have sorrow, mourning to gladness. And so when we connect with one another at a heart level by being super present and not distracted, or not trying to avoid or dismiss what is hard or what is like, joy can abound from those things. And then also, honestly, on the more happy side, a culture of celebration, really being in it with others and celebrating their wins. I believe my life is made better when I help other people win. It is a value in my home. It is a value in my family. It is a value in my businesses. But it requires that you celebrate other people and lift them up and help them win. And that honestly will create an incredible culture of joy, because that helps everybody elevate.
And that doesn't require benchmarks. That's just because everybody's going to have a different thing to celebrate. So within a family, you're celebrating somebody not getting a referral at school that week. I mean, like it could be the small things. What seem like small things to other people, are actually a big thing for this person. And so it's customizable, is I think what I'm trying to say, that you can adjust the celebration for the group.
100%. When you were just saying that, Alex, a story popped into my head of when my oldest daughter, who is now 19, she was 10 months old, and she was born, and we received an unexpected diagnosis of Down syndrome. So here's the deal with Down syndrome. They're delayed in all of their wins. And so she was my first, which I look at as an unfair advantage as a mom, because it really reshaped, honestly, I think how I probably would have parented when it comes to a culture of joy and what we celebrate. Because I remember when she was 10 months old and I took her to the grocery store, and she couldn't sit up. I mean, super low muscle tone, very wobbly, like just, she's in all this physical therapy. And I remember putting her in the front of the grocery cart, like I would see every other parent do with their like probably 6-month-old. I don't remember the milestones. It's been a long time, but I know that like 10 months is super delayed, but I was like, okay, I'm going to give this a try. And I put her in the front, and she literally stayed standing up all the way from across the parking lot from my car until we got through the threshold of the doors that were opening the grocery store. And then she sort of like toppled to the side, but I was like, yes, what a win for her.
Aww.
And I texted my husband. I was like, I sat up for like the whole way through the parking lot to the grocery store. And in that moment, I was actually already pregnant with our second at that time. And I remember going, we're going to celebrate differently in our home. It's not always going to be about just these like accomplishments and milestones and markers that the rest of the world, that's really delayed. And that's not even that big of a win, but it was for us, and it was for her. And so you're right. It can be modified and adapted and based on your values and the things that cause you to pound the table. It is just at the end of the day about connecting to the need of someone else and celebrating them for their progress and their success and trying their best and having some fun.
Yeah, I love it. I was just going to say, because I think so many of the people that we love are sent out into the world with certain standards that they're trying to meet and benchmarks that are celebrated. So whether that's in a career, whether it's in school, whether it's physically, just name it, financially, they're just all these false benchmarks of success. And to say, no, we're defining success here because it was a challenge for you to get here. So that means it's success. And we can do that for each other as friends, and we can do that for our spouses and for our kids and for our coworkers. I mean, it so reeks, I guess, of God's goodness to say, we are going to customize what we celebrate. And that I can see that would create a culture of joy.
Yeah.
Have either of you read The Gap and the Gain?
Yes.
No.
So The Gap and the Gain the concept is that when we are in the gap, we're always comparing against others and what's out there. And when we're in the gain, we're comparing against ourselves. So we're literally just measuring our own success based on how far we've come and where we started. But when we're in the gain, that's where we make huge strides. When we're in the gap, when we're constantly measuring to others, we're always missing the mark, and we're always going to let ourselves down. So it's just it's a great concept, and it's a good book for sure. Okay. So Jen, you're wired for celebration. I think it's just who you are. It just comes out of you. And for those people that maybe aren't wired as naturally toward that, what are some practical ways that you can encourage people to celebrate?
That is a great question. Well, I think that as you were talking about The Gap and the Gain, I have read that book, and I do think so much of it comes from embracing your whole story, all of it. Loving, not loving, but I mean, the Bible does say in James, consider it pure joy. Like when you go, he's talking about when you go through troubles of any kind, because we know that what it produces. And so it's hard to love the hard parts, but I really think that it is essential to love ourselves and embrace our whole story, or it is very difficult to even fully love God, and really difficult to love others, because so often we can only love others to the measure that we personally love. And so I know for me, the hard parts, the ugly parts, the things I'm less proud of, actually have diminished my joy, which then can be a hindrance to like celebrating, because you walk around a little defeated. And so you really need to embrace your whole story and trust that all of it, one, that God can heal the parts that feel completely broken and where you have been deeply wounded, and invite him into that process with you, so that you have that connection with the Holy Spirit. And then two, recognize that it is some of those deep, dark moments. I actually believe you can only experience joy to the measure that you have actually allowed yourself to feel sorrow. It's holding grief and gratitude at the same time. And it's like super conflicting and a little bit disruptive, but I experience incredible joy to the level that I've actually some days let myself lay in bed at 2:00 in the afternoon, binge watching the Kardashians. I don't know if I should say that.
You can
in
say
my
it.
pajamas, like feeling the feels. I don't stay stuck there. And I don't, it's like, you gotta like, and because when you can really embrace like grief and the sorrow over things, you actually get to experience a greater level of joy. So embracing your story and owning the fact that this is your path. And then also recognizing it is, to our conversation here at the beginning a little bit, you are not worthy because of the things that you do. You are not valuable or significant because of your successes or anything, how you look, it's not rooted in any of that. You are worthy because of who you belong to. That's what makes you so valuable. And we are daughters of God. So that can take some pressure off to like, well, but I have to be all of this to be happy, to be joyful. Nope, you don't. You need to be who you are and live out who God called you and created you to be, which is going to be unique and different, but enough, but absolutely enough, and move forward from there. And so I think that it requires some rest. So we're not burnt out and tired. God always like does what's next in our lives and fulfills his purposes in our lives from a position of rest. And then I think it is a decision to get connected to God, connected to others, and then finding the little things. I think third, I would just say little things that you can celebrate in yourself, celebrate yourself. So then that way you have capacity to celebrate others.
I love that. And it doesn't take much. It's just like really just that you were thought about and that someone recognizes. I mean, I have to tell you, last week, I ended up doing a storytelling slam because I was just thought, well, this is a good challenge for me to learn a new craft. And so anyway, my husband was out of town and my son came and some of my other family. And when I got home, my son had gone to the store and bought me flowers and they were waiting for me on the counter when I got home. And it was so touching. I mean, I was like, you got me flowers? Like, I mean, it was the most precious thing to me. I mean, truly, like my husband had been there and got me flowers. It probably, I mean, you know, I love him, but the fact that it was from him and he recognized like this thing for me, it was the most like, it'll be like in my memory bank forever. I mean, it was so kind, the smallest thing, but huge to me. And I just think we get to create that for other people all the time. I mean, it just takes that little bit of thought. Or like today, I was even thinking, one of my friend's sons who plays the same sport as my son has been just going through a really hard time with an injury. And he's trying to come back. And I thought, what can I do to kind of celebrate these small wins that he's having, right? Like, what's a practical way that I could just, you know, take a few cookies over or just something, right? That just says, I see you, I acknowledge you, I see that you're working hard to get back, you know, all those things. And we can do that. But we do have to think about it. It is something we have to like register in our minds and say, take that little bit of thought to say, what can I do?
It requires incredible intention, I think, but not like because it has to be this massively creative, very expensive, you know, thing. It's it's meaningful, I think, to actually look in the eyes and engage the person at the Trader Joe's checkout.
So true.
It's like, how about get off our phones and not be so distracted and look in the eyes of the, as we're paying our bill and say, hi. And I mean, that's good. That's actually good. I think it's fun. I love paying for the, like in a drive-through, like, Starbucks or something. I love paying for the person behind me. It's like, it's such a blast. And I'll never see them again. And it cultivates joy because it elevates perspective, not all about you and all about your circumstances or all about your needs. And then honestly, it actually causes your darkness to dim and the light starts shining a little bit brighter because you begin to see things differently. You're like, oh, it's not that bad. And that was actually really fun.
Lordy. Okay.
Oh, there we
go. So you're talking a lot about leading by example. When you're trying to create a culture, you're bringing other people along with you because you're cultivating joy for yourself. But what do you do in a group where you're trying to bring people with you? They're just not that joyful. And, you just are trying to create this larger sense that helps others come along. And that can be in a family or it could be in a work group or a different group.
Yeah. Great. Good question. Right. And what is that like? Little saying, the bad apple spoils the whole bunch. So if there's a real downer a Debbie Downer in the group, it can cause the whole group to tank quickly. I do think that our actions do speak pretty loud because you cannot take a group of people somewhere that you have not gone yourself. So you do have to lead from the front, so to speak, on it. And honestly, in this particular thing, I think it's more caught than taught. However, I know for all the different kinds of groups and stuff I lead, joy is actually a part of our values and a part of like our mission. And we exist. One of them is like, our lives are made better when we help other people win. So this business exists to enable other people to transform and move forward and have a better life. So, and I think that, people go through hard things and sometimes that is really, we all have moments. We're imperfect people. So we're all going to have moments where we allow the enemy to come in, like he comes in and then we allow him to rob our joy and we have to kind of get reoriented a bit with an elevated perspective. So I think actually giving some practicals like, hey, this is what we're going to do in this group. We're going to collaborate. We're going to celebrate because we have a culture of joy. And for me, I know in a lot of these times when that's not working and when it's pretty evident that there's some I go and I connect. I go and I connect so that I can go deeper and be like, okay, hey, what's going on? I don't ignore it. I don't dismiss them, but I go and connect. And oftentimes that either causes them to be propelled forward or sometimes they decide, I can't, and this just isn't for me, which is always a bummer. But I do think that, again, personal connection, just like it comes from the Holy Spirit for us in the abundance of joy. I think that personal connection with others really matters and can be a game changer, even in larger group formats.
Yeah, I would think that elevating the group in reminding of the greater mission is helpful. And there are just some personalities that are kind of that Debbie Downer. I mean, I'm probably putting that camp by some people that I tend to be a little more serious. I tend to be a little, and yet to reframe, what does it mean to be joyful? To be joyful is to have that elevated perspective. And it's not necessarily happy, peppy that we're talking about. We are talking about having a sense of God's goodness and gratitude for what today brings.
I think that is such an important distinction, because as you were talking, it's not about temperament.
Mm-hmm.
I'm loud. I am loud, but joy doesn't need to be amplified on the volume 10 that I do it. That's just the way God designed me and the way he, created me. And so therefore it's authentic to me to be like loud. And, but it's not about temperament or personality type. Some of the most joy-filled people I know that I really love being in their presence, because they are they actually elevate my perspective, actually meet me at a place of, it's not about volume, but it is about amplification of walk with Christ, an attitude of heart that I love to be in. And they are maybe more soft-spoken and and have less words. So guess what? When their words come into my life, it actually makes a huge difference, because I'm like, whoa, like sometimes my words are worth 5 cents because I got a lot of them, but someone who doesn't talk as much as me or isn't wired like me, their words, it's like, well, that was worth $1, because you don't have it. That is so valuable. So I think it's an important distinction that joy is not necessarily come in the form of dancing. I mean, that's great, but you don't have to be dancing with your kids to have joy in your home. Very important distinction. I'm so glad that you brought that up, because I just think it's an overflow of the connection with the Holy Spirit, and is produced through your relationship with Jesus, and joy abounds, and that will take on the form, however he created you and designed you.
Yeah. Kay Warren has this quote, and I'm not going to get it exactly right because it's not in front of me, but it's basically, she defines it as joy is the settled assurance that everything is going to be okay because God is in control, or something, to that regard. But I like that part about it's a settled assurance. And because of that settled assurance, we have this hope, and the hope that does not disappoint, that is actually what we carry into our spaces. And that reflects in this lightness of spirit. It reflects in the way that we treat others. It respects in the words that we choose, and the light in our eyes, and how we care about people, right? So it's the posture we carry. I mean, joy, and like you said, that can be from person to person, according to how God made us and personality. It's going to be communicated differently, but it's the same thing of just the settled assurance that we have because of Christ. And then that comes through as a hope bearer in the world. And we like to say that here because we believe that's what we are. We are hope bearers, right? And we're not people who shrink in the dark. That's going back to what you were saying, beauty from ashes. The dark actually defines the light. That's why light is so bright, because it actually shapes the light around it, right? So it's the purpose of joy, that we can then even be so much brighter to the world in that space, which you do so well.
Well, thank you. What you are saying, it starts with Jesus. It starts with saying yes to Jesus and trusting him. And that gives us the assurance, because that we like, okay, I don't got this, but he does. Or, he has, I get it. I see what he's doing. He's confirming it. Okay, we got this. Wherever you're at, it just starts. Joy really starts by saying yes to Jesus and listening to him, doing what he says, keeping him at the center. And regardless of the external circumstances, that's what I love about joy, because external circumstances can be so chaotic and can get so disruptive. That's why it's not the same as being happy, because it's hard to be happy. And when life is in massive chaos, you can have joy, because it is what you just said. It is the it's the presence of God. It's the peace that passes all understanding, because you're trusting him and he assures you that he is bigger than any battle that you will face, and that nothing is impossible for him. And that enables joy to abound.
So good. I love it. What have been some helpful resources for you? Are there any books or podcasts that you think are particularly helpful when it comes to encouraging you in this area?
Good question. Counseling. Just kidding. I actually have had a lot of counseling. It's part of why I even, years ago, probably 8 years ago, my husband actually was, well, this is kind of exposing him, but I don't think I wrote about it in my book. He won't care. But he was in a counselor's office, and the counselor said, "Hey, bring your wife in. I want her to, know a part of the process that you're going through." So like, sure, I'll come. I sat there and I was listening. And the therapist goes, and my husband was really, really sad. He was going through a season of deep loss. And, at that time, I didn't understand really what grief was. I know that seems super naive, but I thought, oh, grief is just when someone close to you dies. And I was like late 30s, guys, early 40s. I was learning what that was. And he's like, "So are you good with your husband? He just to have the support of him walking through this season of grief." And I'm like, "Well, of course." And he's like, "Okay, why?" I'm like, "Well, because I don't want to be sad. Like, who wants to be sad? Like, let's get the 3 happy hops and move through this." And the counselor looked at me, he's like, "Oh, okay. And if you ever would like someone to talk to, I will have a good recommendation." And I left there and I'm like, am I just trying to be happy? Wait. It actually like sunk with me. It's a good Christian therapist. So I was just like, what just happened? was that for my husband, Lord, or was that for me? And I did reach out, and I learned like, oh my goodness, I've been diminishing, denying, avoiding, distracting myself from dealing with certain things so that I can be happy. And that began my process. So I have read so many books and listened to so many podcasts since then, because it really was my desire to be authentic and not just put on a happy face. I have an upbeat temperament. Yes, my personality type is very extroverted, but again, that is not necessarily, that's not joy. You can be all those things and be missing the peace and the presence of God. So that's really where the whole journey started for me. I do love Home with Havilah. It's, I'm not sure if you're familiar with her, but it's a great podcast because she's an incredible Christian woman that actually speaks a lot about the things that contribute to joy, which is like your mental well-being, your spiritual well-being, your physical well-being, boundaries, like all relational well-being. So I highly recommend that podcast. It's a great one. So yeah, I mean, that's where my journey actually.
I love it. Yeah, that's great. Can you tell people just a little snapshot about your book?
Oh, sure. So it actually launched May 20th. And it's called Divinely Different. And it's about creating a significant life when the way is unexpected, unwanted, and unknown. Because I've actually had a lot of disruption in my life over the last 10 years. It's not a memoir by any means, though the Lord has used the different stories of my life to kind of gently coach you toward navigating it's not supposed to be this way kind of moments. And really give you a clear picture on fulfilling your purpose, even though the road might look a little bit different than you were planning or maybe even wanted. Also, what real identity, like we connect our identity through external things that are not the value of God. And so true identity, and then community, because that's a huge part of being able to create the life that you love while we're here this side of heaven. And I actually, that's where a lot of joy comes in. There's actually a whole section on cultivating joy in the book. So that's like just a snapshot of what it's all about.
So good. I'm so excited for you. It's so great, Jen.
Thanks.
All right. Well, thank you for spreading your joy today on the podcast. It's just so great to have you and to have this connection. Definitely. You and I met earlier this spring, and it definitely feels like we were meant to meet.
Yes, I'm so happy. I'm honored to be on. You guys are an easy connect for me. So I love having this conversation together.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Bye.